On the FBI, the president made a major announcement. He revealed the appointment of a new deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino. Now, based on what's been reported, and let's be clear, sometimes reporting isn't entirely accurate, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. The FBI director, Kash Patel, had apparently assured Republican senators that the individual selected for this position would be someone already serving as a special agent within the FBI. However, as we all know, Mr. Bongino is not that individual. So the big question is, why was Dan Bongino chosen for this role? And was Mr. Patel incorrect in the assurance he gave to those senators? Well, let's set the record straight. Has anyone in this room actually listened to Dan Bongino? Have they heard him talk about the deep-rooted corruption within the FBI? Have they paid attention to his experiences serving in the United States Secret Service, putting his life on the line for this country? This is a man who has dedicated his life to protecting America, a man who understands just how serious and deep the issues within these institutions really are. Let's not forget, the American people re-elected President Trump for a reason: to shake things up, to drain the swamp, to root out corruption. And yet, what do we see? We see major news networks running headlines, plastering their screens with labels calling Mr. Bongino a far-right podcaster. Excuse me? That is completely false. He is not just some podcaster. He is a former law enforcement officer, a former Secret Service agent, a man who put everything on the line for the safety of this nation. And that is precisely why the President of the United States trusts him in this role. Because it's not about playing political games, it's about fixing these institutions, about bringing integrity back to government agencies. Let's also be real here, Bongino is an outsider to Washington. And we all know what happens when an outsider gets appointed to a powerful position in this town. People panic. They get nervous. And you know what? They absolutely should be. Because Dan Bongino, along with Kash Patel and Attorney General Bondi, is here for one mission: to end corruption, to stop the weaponization of government, and to restore fairness and accountability once and for all. Nervous, and they should be, because Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Attorney General Bondi are focused on rooting out the corruption at these agencies and ending the weaponization of government. Once and for all, I'd like to end with something, as you all know, you just about to. Do you know what, James? I'm feeling generous. Go ahead, I will take it. Thank you. Caroline, sure. I wanted to ask, don't make me regret this. I wanted to ask about the visit and the Russia-Ukraine talks. In general, it's pretty clear to my eye that President Macron was performing a kind of delicate dance, lavishing praise on the president while seeking in his own remarks to try to bind President Trump to positions and even specific language that the president has not committed to hear to. For one of the most bracing comments from President Macron was when he said that the deal that President Trump is negotiating with the Russians must not be, quote, a surrender for Ukraine. All of the public points that we have heard from President Trump, from Secretary Hegf, and from other administration officials talking about these negotiations have averred to quite openly to concessions from the Ukrainians that will have to be made: the minerals deal, the abandonment of their NATO ambitions, and other elements. So far, we have not heard any administration officials suggest a single concession that the Russians should be prepared to make, and so I wonder if you could assure us, at a minimum, that this negotiation process will not be as one-sided as the Europeans seem to think it is, that, in fact, President Putin will also be made to engage in some concessions to reach this deal. Well, I think the president knows how to make a deal better than anyone who has ever assumed the office of the American presidency. And in order to make a deal, you have to bring both sides to the table, and typically when you make a good deal, both sides leave that table a little bit unhappy. I'm not going to outline the concessions that the president and his team are engaged in discussing. These are obviously ongoing negotiations, and it would be unwise of me to impede them from this podium. But the president has made significant improvements in ending this conflict. He is committed to seeing an end to the war. He wants to see the bloodshed and the killing stopped. He wants to stop seeing young men being killed and slaughtered. This has been going on for far too long. The president inherited this mess because of the incompetence of the previous administration, and he's committed to fixing it, and he's made you know some of those concessions clear, but I'm not going to get ahead of him on additional ones, but he is wholeheartedly committed to striking a peace deal in Russia and Ukraine, also in the Middle East. Thank you very much, guys. Good to see you. We'll see you later. Good afternoon, everybody. Afternoon, how are we today? Great. Good. During his inaugural address, President Trump promised that America would be a manufacturing nation once again, and liberal pundits mocked him for it, but those critics were proven wrong once again on the heels of President Trump's Oval Office meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook last week. Apple just announced its largest ever commitment to American jobs in industry, with plans to spend and invest more than $500 billion due in America over the next 4 years. Over the course of the current Trump administration, Apple plans to hire around 20,000 new workers, creating high-paying jobs right here in America, and the investment isn't limited to one specific region of our country. App teams and facilities will expand all over our country in Arizona, California, Iowa, Nevada, North Carolina, Michigan, Oregon, Texas, and Washington. With President Trump in charge, America is open for business. Apple CEO Tim Cook said it best in the company's announcement. We are bullish on the future of American innovation. On top of this incredible Apple announcement, President Trump already announced more than $1 trillion in pledged investments into the United States. And on another important note, that the American people entrusted President Trump to fulfill this administration's efforts to seal the border continue to prove extraordinarily successful. In President Trump's first month back in office alone, illegal border crossings hit lows not seen in decades, down 94% over the past year, while interior arrests are up 134%. And this past Saturday, this is a significant statistic that I wanted to share with all of you. There were only 220 illegal border crossings on Saturday. This is a 15-year low. Think about that in comparison to the amount of illegal border crossings we saw under the previous administration.